good morning, and good morning again. Yes, it's another Saturday that the good Lord has blessed us with, and I'm just absolutely delighted to welcome you today. If you're on Facebook Live, let me just say thank you for being faithful and diligent and tuning in today. If you're on our YouTube channel, I want to say welcome to you as well. Thank you for being faithful and diligent to us as well. Maybe you're calling in today on the landline that we have established. I am absolutely delighted today to welcome you. I'm in the Winston-Salem area today, and so I'm certainly thankful for all of my Winston connections today. Good morning to my God brother Joe Nance. I will be contacting you today as well. Listen, if you're here today and you can hear me, I want you to just lift those hands up and say thank you to a God above. It simply means that no matter what life threw at you, you're still able to be here, which means that you are a survivor. Let me tell you, my friend, we've got a great session set up for you today. I want to also show you real quickly how to join us. I want to try to get right in. We've got a ways to cover today. I want to ask you to help me today to inform a friend who might be trying to struggle with this thing called LIFE. You can join us by way of Facebook Live. There's the handle, Dr. K.L. Williams Space Ministry. And you can also join us by way of YouTube, Dr. K.L. Williams Space Ministry as well. And then you see the phone line that you can contact us at. Also, your voice matters is a wonderful way to contact us if you have areas that you would like to us to dive deeper in. Maybe you want a different topic that you want us to explore for you. This is a Real Talk Life's Issues Coaching Series. What that means is we try our level best to provide you with some level of coaching based on the wonderful comments that you provide for us. And then on top of that, it's real straightforward. This is not for kids because sometimes we go down hard in the logistics of the facts and not the feelings. And so it's straight, honest, transparent conversation. We try to always give you some practical tools to put in your toolbox, and always keep in mind anyone can participate. It's every Saturday for 60 minutes, and we're just delighted to be able to come before you. Let's get started today. We've been doing a deep dive over these last couple of sessions on the state of Black men in America. Let me tell you, it is very much a topic that is necessary in our communities. All you have to do is just turn on the TV. You don't even have to leave your homes. You can go right outside. In most of these communities, we see this prevalence of the depravity of the Black male and the Black male's condition. And so what we wanted to try to do was to provide you first and foremost with some awareness that this is not just a feel-good topic, that there are really data-driven facts that we cannot deny. And then also after that, we want to talk about ways in which we could become an advocate. Absolutely so. It's not how you start, it's how you finish. It's going to help somebody right there, because the reality is some people are born into misfortune. Can I talk real good today that there are those who really and truly don't understand that there's a term now called area deprivation. We're going to talk about that some today. The fact that people, based on your zip code, did you hear what I said? That there's a new literature that suggests they could take your zip code and give some predictions about your future based on the zip code that you're in. I'm telling you right now, many of us are unaware of this, And our goal is just really just try to bring some awareness around some of these constructs that are governing our Black community, and more specifically our Black males. And so we wanted to talk about that just for a little bit this morning. We prepared um, a PowerPoint slide, and I want to get right into that. I'm going to ask you also, by way of a housekeeping, if you're blessed at all or just want to say good morning. Listen, if you'll do that for us, come out of the backdrop and say good morning, hello, or something, amen. It'll let us know that you're actually in our audience today, and I'd love to give you a shout out um, as we go throughout the broadcast today. And so let's get started. We have a PowerPoint that we talked about last week. And really and truly, Michelle Alexander, in her book, The New Jim Crow, we have been talking about this book. And I would suggest if you're going to be relevant in this day and time, that what she does in her book does some amazing research, years of research represented in a book called The New Jim Crow. My friends, it is a staggering compilation of some facts and data that you would be well served to familiarize yourself with as it relates to Black men. We started this conversation around mass incarceration, the fact that when you look at all of the countries, as much as America wants to brag about being the gold standard, we are so far behind on solving the mystery of mass incarceration. We lead the entire world around the staggering, disproportionate numbers of Black men that are in jail among anyone else in the entire world. And can I tell you something? India, a third world country, has figured it out, as they have, per her report, the lowest incarceration of Black males, as a matter of fact, just of people in general. And so what does it look like, my friend? Everybody that think about this for a moment. Now, we have to have law and order. I get that. But can you arrest everybody? At some point, it becomes an untipped scale. And here in our country, you violate a law, and the only suggestive intervention that we have is incarceration. Well, the reality is John Legend is leading an initiative right now. You can look him up. What he's arguing is that when a person has been incarcerated and they come back out, what he's arguing is a long-standing problem is that the person is re-victimized all over again. Why do you say that, Williams? Because of that one box that they have to check. Have you been incarcerated? Have you been arrested? And then God help you if you check the box for a felon. It is a modern way for discrimination. And there's a national movement right now trying to remove that box, because what the box does is it guarantees discrimination. Even after you've paid your debt to society, you have to check that box. That's right. And when you check it, it gives a person that you're seeking an opportunity to say yes or no. And it's within their power to discriminate. And so here we have it today. We're real specific in trying to talk about this thing called mass incarceration. And then I spoke to someone just yesterday who says that they had a family member who was being released after years of being incarcerated. And then here's the thing. The person comes back into a community that literally has left them behind. Can you imagine being isolated from society 20 and 30 years? And then when you come out, there are all kinds of new developments that you have no idea of how to interact, or even for that matter, try to survive in. And so there is this disproportionate re-entry process that we've been trying to figure out also as a country what that looks like. I can tell you that that this young man who will be released this week, having served some 30 years, I'm telling you, my friend, that we as a country have to figure this out, because when you release him back into this society, there is some level of onus on our part to provide a path that this person can now become a positive contributing citizen. They've paid their debt, and then we don't want to re-victimize them all over again. So now today, that's enough around the mass incarceration. Be clear about this. It doesn't hit home until it's somebody in your family, or you're the one who's been in a system of mass incarceration. And listen, I'm telling you right now that there is evidence to show that there has even been racial bias even in the sentencing of two citizens with the same crime, and get um, totally disproportionate sentencing. Good morning, Mr. Flanagan. You know it's always great to have you in the pews as well. What we're trying to bring everyone up to speed on is this mass incarceration. I want to talk about this topic today, but not before I really put on your mind the challenge that we have in this criminal justice system, that we have not figured out how to deal with someone who has broken the law. Now, listen, then we have to factor in mental illness. Like, I know law officers, let's just be real today, Black men who struggle with mental illness. And uh, I know one personally right here in Winston-Salem. The wife calls the law enforcement to help her with her husband who is struggling with mental illness, only for the man to be basically shot because he was non-compliant when the officer gets there. And so what we find is many of my law enforcement friends are saying they're not equipped for this mental illness challenge. When they get the call, they show up to the scene, and now they have to become a mental health expert. Let's just be clear with ourselves that America has not figured out that when a person is non-compliant, that throwing them in a cell without any intervention is inhumane, and it is cruel. That there should be some systematic way that we rehabilitate a person that has been incarcerated. Now, it's a long-standing debate, and I just want to raise the challenge to you that we can't throw everybody in America in a jail cell. Ultimately, it becomes a burden on the very people who have turned their backs and say, I don't want to deal with it. Why do you say that, Williams? Because these same people who we now have incarcerated, we have a burden to take care of them. Yep, there it is right there. And they become the property of the state. And by law, you have to give them certain rights. You got to feed them, you got to clothe them, you got to put controlled environments around them. Listen, this is an ongoing problem that we as Americans have to figure out, lest we ourselves become a part of the very system that we have turned our backs on. And so let's talk about, again, you'll find all of this in the book, The New Jim Crow by Michelle Alexander. And I want to talk to you today about the age of color blindness. Now, this, you do know that this, what Michelle Alexander argues is that when you have this caste system, you do know that she did an excellent job painting the fact that we came through an era of slavery where you enslaved a whole generation of people against their will. You held them and made them conform to a system that was not in their favor. And then laws began to become in effect that these things were illegal. We had amendments to the Constitution, which she talks about, the 13th Amendment, which says that slavery is illegal, but it has a loophole in the amendment unless they are criminals. Oh, my goodness. And so the moment that they can get you branded to go into incarceration, you do understand that you lose your rights and become the property of the state. Okay, and so now we fast forward to the age of Reconstruction, and you do know that during Reconstruction, there was a big movement to have blacks, for example, starting to get involved, holding offices politically, and that was starting to reshape the demographics and the landscape of the United States of America. And ultimately, you started seeing African American men starting to mount up and become voices. Fast forward a little bit further, and you started hearing these organizations pop up trying to slow down this Reconstruction movement where African Americans were now finally able to start participating. You should know your history as an American. It has nothing to do with being black or white. This is the history of America. And during the Reconstruction movement, there started to look like an appearance that African American men might just have a voice in politics. And then we find that these institutions started coming up. This is where the Jim Crow movement came in. This whole notion around using law enforcement to enforce these unconstitutional laws. For example, separate but equal black water fountains and white water fountains, black restaurants using the back door and the white of the restaurant using the front door. These, the bus, we know Rosa Parks came through as an icon in this Jim Crow movement, that she refused to go to the back. I'm telling you, my friend, you ought to know the history. Listen, the reality is, I love what President Obama says, and I want to quote it right here. He says, the facts are stubborn. That simply means whether you like it or whether you do not like it, it doesn't change the facts. In this United States of America, during this Jim Crow movement, we know that Rosa Parks becomes an icon around not going to the back, and not giving up her seat because she was black. Now we have to go a little bit further. So then, why do we see these institutions that pop up like the KKK? Yes, I'm telling you, these institutions were doing their best for what we call retaliation and panic. The landscape of America is changing, whether you like it or not. The population of these minority groups, when you look, all you have to do is look at the census. It is clear that the landscape is changing. Whether we sit back and agree with it or not, more and more Blacks are being born in this country. More and more Hispanics, Native Americans are being born in this country. And what it's doing is reshaping the landscape of this, the America that we once knew. It is not the same. And what you find is these Nazi neoliberals, neoconservatives, they're panicking because they're trying to stop the landscape from changing. My friend, I'm telling you, what an idiotic concept. The reality is that when people continue to multiply, the landscape is going to change. I can go into an era during this era of Jim Crow where they promoted Black women and you ready for this? Birth control, like to be on the system, this welfare system. I'm telling you, my friend, it was a concerted effort to keep the landscape from changing. That you do know that there was a time in our country, even trying to discourage being on the system and having so many babies. Let me tell you something right now. The reality is, if you continue to multiply, you don't even have to be an expert to understand the law of multiplication. That if you continue to multiply, the numbers are going to, at some point, change the demographics. So I want to just challenge you to look into this book called The New Jim Crow. I have one other talking point I want to talk about, and that is that there was a concerted effort from the government to keep a whole demographics of Black men down and incarcerated. She does an excellent job. She goes all the way back around this code word that was used and still being used in politics. It really represents a derogatory concept for people of color. That when you use terms like law and order, it is a code word towards a discriminatory concept for people of color. It is to suggest somehow or another that the only people, the only demographic that are out of order are people of color. And when you look at the legal system, we know that there's interwoven, supposedly Lady Justice has a blindfold on. But let me just tell you right now that she, through numerous interviews, facts, not feelings, got President Bill Clinton to acknowledge that he had perpetuated a generation of Black men incarcerated with his pen of 3 strikes and you're out. And what we also know, yes, it's a fact that crime and drugs was not even the high priority in the season that he wrote the law. Look it up. Do your own research. And what you will find was an intentional, asserted effort to keep a whole group of people incarcerated. And so now today, I want to speak to you about another concept called the age of color blindness. That now there is this sweeping concept. You should be well served to do your own research. Don't take my word for it. Just look around and then do your own research. Tell me what you find. Be glad to come back on the session and have a conversation with you. What we know now is this age of color blindness. It trivialized and disguised the depths of Black suffering in the 80s and the 90s. It left America blind to the new Jim Crow. The age of colorblindness. What this simply says is that we come to the table not as blacks, not as whites, but just as a human. We're going to talk about what that says today. And I'm going to challenge you to bring back your rebuttals, but I want to help you real good. This age of colorblindness has left a lot of Americans blind to some of the laws that are still in effect around the Jim Crow era. We have a new Jim Crow now, and nearly impossible to improve intentional racism. When you look at this new notion of colorblindness, it is to suggest that you're making decisions and race has nothing to do with it. Next slide, please. Let's go a little bit further. Now, we do know around this caste system, slavery was a caste system because you had the haves, we know what we call the upper class, then we had the middle class, and then we had the, quote, low class. Followed a growing unity of poor whites and black people against rich white elitists. You can look up the Bacon's Rebellion, for example. When you look at slavery, what they finally found out was that there were poor whites who were being discriminated against as well, not because of their color, but because of their class. My friends, we're still dealing with this, even with number 45. We got him out of office, but be clear about one thing. I'm not political, but he had an intentionality around the 1%. And we know that the majority of the people in America are not in that 1%. And then we know also about Jim Crow. It created a class system. You know, the prominent whites, you get preferential treatment. And what we know is this notion of Jim Crow was an attempt to slow down the progress of blacks. Oh yes, my friend. When you peel back the layers of the onion, you're going to find out that people were so afraid of the progress of blacks. But listen how ignorant that is. We've now had a black president over the United States of America. My friends, there's just some things that the momentum is so strong that it would be like a runaway locomotive to try to get in the way of it. Women now, black women, finally, are breaking the glass ceiling. Am I talking good to anybody today? The reality is that there are some things time will help level the playing field. And then we have, obviously, mass incarceration. In this caste system, following a growing unity of poor whites and black people against rich white elitists, the post-civil rights attention turned to human rights of the poor and appeal to white people's fear of criminal blacks. This whole notion around the angry black man. Can I talk about it for a moment? That there is this fear that politicians use to say that the black man is dangerous and he's very aggressive. And when I want to talk about it for a moment, this whole notion about when a black man expresses himself somehow or another, it's interpreted as anger. I've been in those scenarios myself. And let me just tell you, unapologetically, I'm very much able to articulate my concerns. And sometimes when you do that, even as a black man who has matriculated through academia, good standing in the community, a doctorate degree. I've been in scenarios and environments where I've been tagged as an angry black man only because I was able to raise some very uncomfortable conversations. And those conversations typically were encapsulated around racism and what we call institutionalized racism, or a systematic racism. And when you raise these issues, somehow or another, you're branded as this criminal, fearful black male. But can I talk to somebody today that the landscape is changing, and more, thank God, are able to come and join that stage and have some very uncomfortable conversation and still, my friend, maintain your dignity. And so there was this effort around mass incarceration. I did my thesis for my doctoral degree on human rights, the basic guarantee of a human. If you're born in this world, you should be entitled to certain basic human rights. Oh my goodness, listen, it's a wonderful topic to dive down in. I don't have time to go down that path today, but I want to tell you, when you start talking about it doesn't matter whether you're black or whether you're white, whether you're male or whether you're female, whether you're young or whether you're old, there are certain basic human rights that you, as a human being, should be guaranteed. And I want to tell you, everybody does not share that same school of thought. Researchers have written expressing their discontent around leveling the playing field, that every human being, even if you are incarcerated, deserves certain human rights. All right, so let's get a little bit further into our conversation. Next slide, please. So I wanted to talk to you today around this couple of probing questions, and maybe you can chime in as we deal a little bit further with color blindness. Now, why does the United States have the highest rate of incarceration in the world? Have you ever thought about that? I just want you today to, if you can, put in the chat your thoughts around why the United States, we're the world global gold star country, and yet we have not been able to figure out why we have the highest incarceration rate in the world. That simply means we put more people in prison than anybody else in the entire world. Why do you think that? I'd love to hear from you on why you think that is the case. All right. And then another probing question for today. It costs, listen to this, $55,000 a year to incarcerate a person for a year in the New York State prison. Is this the way we want our society to allocate its resources? It's the facts, my friend. Let's deal with them. For one person, 55, we have human beings who work and go to college and can't even get a salary of $55,000. And yet I want you to just put this into the corridors of your mind. And then let's try to have a conversation. How do you encourage people to have careers, and those careers aren't even nowhere near $55,000 a year? And yet, a person in the New York State prison, it costs the citizens $55,000 a year to incarcerate that individual. Don't you think that we need to figure out another system? I mean, just think of what that looks like. I showed you in a previous slide that America was right at 600,000 plus per 100,000, outpacing anyone else in incarceration, in particular for Black men. Think about the deficit that we're creating by not figuring out. I didn't say that you shouldn't have some accountability, but what I am saying is that this system, this formula that we have is not the most efficient, let me just say. And then while you're pondering on that question, why are more African American males under the control of the criminal justice system now than were in slavery in 1850? What a staggering question. When you look at the number of Black men that were in slavery in 1850 and the number of Black men that are incarcerated now, the numbers are staggering that there are more Black men in the prison system than were in slavery. My friends, we gotta come up with another model, another formula to deal with what happens when a person just violates whatever laws you have in place, right? You have to have some accountability. I'm not arguing that you don't have accountability, but what I am arguing is that when the infraction is made, we might want to come up with another system. Think about it. I want to repeat that one more time. That currently we have more African American males under the control of the criminal justice system now, currently, than were enslaved in 1850. Let me tell you, my friends, we can turn our eyes, turn our heads, and act like, oh, no, that's not my problem. But you do understand one thing, that $55,000 a year cost is passed on to the citizens. Yes, my friends. And so I like what James Baldwin says. He says these are all our young people, and what they become or do not become, we shall all pay the price for. That's what I want to ask some very staggering questions today. Next is, does the increase in the rate of incarceration reflect the racism in the U.S. society? Think about it for a moment. Does the increase, in other words, there are more African American males incarcerated, does it reflect the racism in the United States today? When you consider that there are more Black males incarcerated than any other subgroup, explain how we're going to deal with this issue. It is one that we cannot turn a deaf ear to. And I wanted to spend the last few moments of my time together on a topic called colorblinded racial ideology. It holds the belief that an individual's race or ethnicity should not influence how that individual is treated in society. Now, we know this is not the case. When you look at it, just think for a moment. There was a bill introduced into the North Carolina legislation about racism in the criminal justice sentencing. They fought hard to keep that from becoming law, because what we know for sure is that it's very difficult to pin down, because a person would almost literally have to audibilize that that's what they're doing. But thank be to God, we can have things like data to show that two men create this the same infraction. Both men break the law, And then we can also now go back and reflectory examine that a burglary happened at a establishment. One man is black and one man is white. One man gets 25 years and another man gets probation. Let me tell you, my friend, these are the facts around color blindness. And there is this sweeping notion now that there is what we call color blindness. If you believe that, then I want to challenge your belief system that there is still color blindness in our communities. And you do know that the lending institution had redlining. Yes, I want to talk about it because these are ways in which a black male was turned down from getting a loan for a home, and the white counterpart, listen, very similar backgrounds, was granted the approval of that same type loan. We know this. This is what the history has shown. The redlining. It's one that we cannot turn a deaf ear to. I want to talk about another topic, a little sensitive, but we'll get through it today with no problem. We know in the Alzheimer's space that the National Alzheimer's Association did a research survey, and what they found was that there were documented cases of people of color, black men, who say that they did not have confidence in the medical doctor, that race would not play a role in their treatment. Documented. Listen, these are facts that the National Alzheimer's Association has done the research for us. And I want to tell you something that when you look over the landscape, it sounds like a wonderful term, colorblindness, that we all can just come to the table and have equal treatment. Now, I want to talk to you about three terms. Listen to this: diversity, equity, and inclusion. You should do your homework. Diversity, equity, and inclusion. And what I want to argue is that it's one thing to have diversity. It's another thing to have inclusion, that everybody should be included. Sorry. And then also diversity, equity, and inclusion, that you should bring everyone to the same table. But here's the challenge. It's called your culture. See, my challenge with colorblindness is it is to suggest somehow or another that I have to come to the table and lose my contextual context. Listen, James Brown wrote a song, said, "I'm black and I'm proud." Listen, I should not have to denounce my culture to try to obtain some level of equity. The reality is I'm black. Can't change that. I was with a social justice champion just yesterday afternoon, and he said in no uncertain terms, "Williams, no matter how much diversity, equity, and inclusion you talk about, I'm still black." He was real clear. And I wanted to talk about it on my broadcast today, that yes, I believe in diversity. Yes, I believe in equity. And yes, I believe in inclusion. But in the process, I don't denounce the fact that I'm still black, that I have a culture, and I should not have to denounce my culture to get equal treatment. Oh, let me talk to somebody today. We see it all over the place. That when you look at a person, for example, who has dreads, that should not suggest that that individual doesn't get diversity, equity, and inclusion. The very fact that they have the dreads, which is to their culture, they should not be disqualified or mistreated or diminished because of their culture. I want to talk today about your culture, and this I want to even go a little bit further. There is, even in the church world, hear me good when I say these words, there is what we call the art of Black preaching. And listen, I'm a trained minister. I get it. I should be able to articulate a theological concept, have research, have references. But then there is what we call the art of Black preaching. If you've ever experienced it, it is a art specific to the Black culture. Listen. The art of Black preaching has an imagery that is, it's an amazing experience, let me just say. And what I have tried to share to people is that, yes, you're a minister, but you don't lose your culture just because you're a minister. You're still a minister, but you're a Black minister, and you can't denounce that, because being a Black minister says that there are certain cultural realities that you bring to that preaching moment. Any more than you are if you're a white minister. You have culture that speaks to the realities of your experience. And I need to say that the president made a quote, "To thine own self be true." Yeah, I want to talk to somebody today. To thy own self be true. When I mount the pulpit, I'm a Black preacher, and I'm unapologetic about the experience that I bring. When you sing, there's an art to Black singing. Let me tell you something right now. It's unexplainable. There's an art that comes to what we call soul food. Let me just talk to you, my friend. I don't care who you are today, that there are cultural experiences that are explicitly connected to who you are. There's no reason for you to try to denounce. And I want to be a little bit controversial today and say that there is another term called assimilation. That sometimes people want to be accepted by another culture so bad till they're willing to denounce their own culture. Who am I speaking to on today? Let me tell you something right now. I am 100% confident of who I am. And I want to suggest to you as well, don't be shameful of who you are. Your culture informs who you are. There's another term I learned in my seminary journey called hermeneutics. Can I talk with you for a moment about hermeneutics? Hermeneutics says that when I go to preach, everything that I have learned up until that moment of execution informs my preaching. So, for example, that when I came up in the culture of the Black experience, I cannot disconnect myself from my experience when I make the delivery. It's called your hermeneutics. And I want to suggest to somebody, don't be ashamed of your experience, because your experience informs who you are. Let me give you an example. When I preach, I came up very with meager opportunities and resources, very humble origin, some would say. And when I preach, I talk about being the product of a projects, Sandy Run Projects in Jacksonville, North Carolina. And sometimes when I preach, I've heard people come up and tell me, you shouldn't tell people that you're from the projects because you have such a polished look. And I say from the pulpit that I say this because I am who I am because of the experiences that I have. They all shape who I am today. And what a travesty it would be if I stood before people with a mirage, that's a fake image of who I really am, that all of my humble beginnings, all of the experiences that I've seen and witnessed being in the projects, all of that helped shape my hermeneutics today, so that someone else in the audience might look at me and say, if he did it, I can do it. If he overcame, I can overcome. If he can be true to who he is, then I can be true to who I am. I've told people I didn't always have the privileges that I have now, but the lack thereof helped shape my theology. The humble beginning that I had, it helps inform who I am today. And I want to say to somebody in my closing today, if you have been the product of assimilation, that on the job you want to be accepted so bad that you're willing to denounce your culture, I'm going to give you a charge today to find yourself and be true to yourself, because people come and people go. But you have to be good with the person that you see in the mirror. Because make no mistake about it, there comes a time when there's nothing but you and yourself in the room. And you have to be okay with that person. It's called assimilation. Thank you so much, Mr. Flanagan. I want to charge y'all to look at his comments. Very, very timely comments. And thank you for that affirmation, Mr. Flanagan. What I want to leave you with today is that we all are pilgrims through this land. And the reality is we're on our way to a better home. But wouldn't it be good to know that you made a difference while you were here? And the only way to make a true difference is you have to be good with the person that you see in the mirror. Listen, some people are going to like it. Some people will not. But at the end of the day, I made my mind up. Listen to this. This is my personal affirmation to myself, that I'm not a people-pleasing preacher, but I am a preacher who is in touch with my inner self. And that, my friend, informs what I do when I'm in the pulpit, when I'm in the community, and even when I'm with my family. You have to learn to be okay with the man in the mirror. And you have to be able to be unapologetically Black. That's who I am. And I thank God that I've gotten to a place in my career to where, can I tell you, for every person that appreciates you, there'll also be someone who doesn't have any positive thing to say about what you're doing. But the good news is we're not on this journey by ourselves. The good Lord helps us, but we have to first be honest with ourselves that your culture whatever it is, it should inform who you are, and never under no circumstances denounce your culture. That's it for today. I wanted to thank you for your time. Listen, in this world of color blindness, I want to challenge you. Yes, you can certainly engage diversity. You can certainly engage equality and equity, and you can certainly engage inclusion. But as my grandmama would say, but for God's sakes, don't abandon who you are, because at the end of the day, that's the person that you're going to be with when no one else is around. Can I pray with you today? God, we thank you for this time of fellowship and friendship. We thank you for this time of sharing information as well. As we leave this space today, I want to ask, Father, that you would just bless every listener, every viewer, give them the power and the magnanimous presence to be able to be assured that you are right there with them. As we move about trying to figure out these challenges in our world, there are so many. We're asking for your guidance. Do us as you did Solomon. You granted us wisdom, oh Father, to be able to make right decisions that we can hand this world over to the next generation a little bit better than what was handed to us. This is our prayer today, in the powerful, mighty, and magnanimous name of Jesus the Christ. Amen. Listen, I love you, and there's absolutely nothing you can do about it. My goal is to empower you to be the best self that you can be. As we leave here today, I challenge you to look introspectively within yourself and find those great qualities and experiences, and then share them with someone else. The Lord bless you. The Lord keep you. The Lord make his face to shine upon you. May God be gracious unto you, and may he give you peace until we meet again. God bless you today.